So again, looking at solving rational equations, one thing that's going to be consistent with this, with what we just did, is you have to find the excluded values still. Okay, which I don't think is too difficult. Some people, I think that's probably been the easiest part of it all, really, is finding those. Okay, so on number 1, I don't have to factor anything, so I'm going to go ahead and find the excluded values now, instead at the very end, whenever I've got a ton of work in the box and I have to go back and look over stuff that I might have crossed out. So, Jade, what 2 excluded values would I have on this one?
-1.
Okay.
And then, would you solve for x plus 5?
Mm-hmm.
Like, would you set it equal to 0?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, hold on.
Just give me the fraction.
Oh, 5 plus 4.
Make sure you got negative on there too.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I've got this. I've got that one done right there. So whenever I have this, if it's all factored out, and it looks like this, I've got a fraction equal to a fraction. This is whenever you know that you can cross multiply on this. Okay, so I'm going to multiply 3 times 4x plus 5. Now a lot of you, whenever you get used to doing these and seeing these, you'll be able to quickly tell me that that's 12x plus 15, but for now, I would prefer you to go ahead and write it all out. Then I'll distribute the 3, and I'll distribute the 9. And then I'm going to solve for x. So I would subtract 9x to the left first to give me 3x. Then I would subtract 15 to the right to give me negative 6. And x equals negative 2. Seems weird that we find the excluded values, what x doesn't equal, and then at the end we find what x does equal. And again, kind of what I talked about a couple class periods ago. Whenever we get into the graphing, we'll get into those excluded values a little bit more and talk about what they mean. But on some of these problems, you may do this and you may get multiple answers down here. Maybe it's quadratic and you have to factor it and solve. One of those answers may be one of those excluded values. Okay, so if you get one of those excluded values, then you ignore that answer. It can't be one of those. So you'll just cross it out at the end. And I think we might get to one of those where we see that. So looking at example 3, which makes sense because it's right after number 1. Again, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and factor everywhere where I can. So on the denominator, what factors of 9 add up to negative 6? Negative 3, negative 3. Okay. The denominator of the second fraction, how can I factor that? Do what? Greatest common factor. What is that? X. It's very similar to a lot of those problems that we saw just now in the warm-up. Alright, so let's go ahead and find those excluded values on this. What would those excluded values be? I hear a couple people whispering them. And 0. Remember, if you've got that x term kind of all by itself, right there, x equals 0, and then there's no more math to be done. Before you cross multiply, and this is why we factor it first, and it'll make your life easier. Can I cancel anything out? Not the x minus 3's. The x's. And a lot of people have a hard time seeing that, okay? But I can cancel those x's out and know that on this, we're not multiplying and dividing these, so if I have something here in the denominator of the first fraction that's also in the numerator of that other fraction, I cannot cancel those out. Alright, that's only in that multiplication division stuff. So I will, now I have that, so I'll cross multiply. So I end up with 9 times x minus 3 equals 3 times x minus 3 times x minus 3. Once I'm there, I'm going to simplify both sides. So on the left, I'm going to end up with 9x minus 27. On the right, I've really got a couple steps that I need to do. I've got I'm multiplying three things. 3, x minus 3, and x minus 3. Does it matter the order in which I do that? Do I need to multiply these two first, or do I need to multiply these two first? Or does it matter? It doesn't matter, okay? You know, if I multiply 2 times 3 times 4, that's going to be the same as 4 times 3 times 2. The order, if I'm doing multiplication, it doesn't really matter. For me, the easiest way is probably to multiply the two binomials. Okay? And then I'm going to distribute that 3 into that. Then I need to solve for x. So if I have a problem, and a lot of people get lost on this, if I have a problem and I'm asked to solve for x, and it has that on there, what does that mean I'm going to have to do? Not necessarily square root. We might be able to get away with that. Majority of the time we won't. Factor. Okay? To factor it, what do I need to do with all of this first? Do what? Not simplify. Greatest common factor?
I was saying combining the like terms.
Okay. So you're right. So I need to set it equal to 0, and that should be minus 18x, sorry. I want to set it equal to 0, and in that process I'll have to combine all the like terms. So I'm going to subtract 9x to the right, so I've got negative 18x minus 9x, which is minus 27x. And then I end up with 27 plus 27, which is 54. And now I can factor it. So very first step of factoring is to see if I have a what? Greatest common factor. Do I?
Yeah.
Yes. What is it? And that is... Somebody help me out there. What's 54 divided by 3? Not what? 18. There you go. Sorry, I'm moving slow today. Alright, so now I have this in here, and this looks a lot more familiar with the stuff that we usually factor. What factors of 18 add up to negative 6? Or negative 9, sorry. There you go. Yep. Spoiler alert. Negative 6 is one of them. Now, if I'm asked, remember what we're having to do here and what your answer should look like. If I'm having to solve, what do I need to do with those two factors? Set them equal to 0. So I've got x equals 3, and I've got x equals 6. Okay, can both of those be an answer? No, which one cannot be the answer? 3, which we identified at the top. So you would just, how you would actually write that on there would probably look something like that. Okay, you would still write the x equals 3, but then you can check and show me that, well, it doesn't work. Okay. So let's go down to, I want you to attempt number 1 on the class practice. Two. After that, then you're just solving for x, which hopefully you got -3 there. Alright? So next, let's look at number 2. Can I factor the numerator of the first equation, or of the first fraction? What can I do to it? Greatest common factor. And be able to see the ones that at first glance may not look like you can factor it, but it might have a greatest common factor, such as that. Factoring the denominator on there. What factors of -8 add up to -2? -4 and +2. Okay. Jeremy, what would my excluded values be on this one? 4 and -2. Okay. In the first fraction, Roslyn, can I cancel anything out?
Yeah, the
X plus 2's. Peyton, in the second fraction, can I cancel anything out?
X minus 4.
Is there an x minus 4 up here?
Oh.
No. So after that, I'll cross multiply. So I've got 2 times x minus 4 equals x minus 4 times x plus 1. Okay. Now, I'm going to get into this. This is another way that you can cancel something out. So the last one we saw like this, we multiplied everything, we set it equal to 0, we factored it. Correct? Everybody remember that from 5 minutes ago? Alright. Thank you, Jade. So another way that you can do this, if you look on either side of that equal sign, and you have the same factor on both sides, which do we have that here? What factor is on both sides? You can cancel both of those out. Okay? Because if you think about it, if I want to divide this by x minus 4, I've got to also don't write this down. I'm going to erase all this. Both of those cancel out. So whenever I do that, I'm left with 2 equals, and all I'm left with over there is x plus 1. Subtract 1, so x equals 1. Okay, so that's kind of a shortcut. What that's going to do is, on that previous problem, we got 2 answers, but one of them was canceled out by the excluded value. Had we done it this way, this problem, the way we did the other one, we would have had that second answer that would have gotten canceled out by the excluded values. Okay? So, okay, you may not have gotten through all the notes. I'm going to go ahead and stop right here, though, and that's fine. Anything that's on here that you may get confused about as you're going through your homework, we'll probably finish these up on the review day, which is going to be next Monday. So whenever we come in, on Monday, you will get your quiz back then, Monday or Tuesday, depending on what day you are. You'll get your graded quiz back, and then we will also finish up these notes, which won't take very long.